So tomorrow we will be welcoming Lord Ganesha, the god of knowledge and wisdom, part human, part elephant, a symbol of nature. What has become an extremely pressing concern for many during this joyous festival is the day of immersion, when we are having to say goodbye to Ganesha. Instead of thinking of the symbolism behind this immersion, we are now having to think of ways to get rid of the debris that remains floating across our already stifled rivers. Polluted because of the immense amount of non-degradable, one-time use plastic garlands, decorations, accessories, jewelry with which we adorn the idol. Perhaps in some tiny corner of a village, still untouched by plastic mania, little girls and boys string up garlands of flowers from their backyard. They use the same wooden decor that has descended from their great-grandparents and use brightly colored sarees from their mother's closet as the backdrop. This might be a home of someone with limited economic resources, but it is certainly a sustainable one. Today, I'm going to talk about reducing inequalities. Ironically enough, in many cases, the change that this brings about is unsustainable. Unfortunately, now the idea of development comes hand in hand with unsustainability. I want to emphasize the fact that while we think of reducing inequalities, we should be thinking of ways in which that does not lead to the degradation of our environment, leading to climate change. We have heard that inequality is the root of social evil. We see inequalities all around us, whether it is in the form of aunties telling us to put on more makeup to make our skin lighter, or the unequal distribution of income and opportunity between different groups in society. Inequality present in the social sector, dividing people economically, has been a challenge India has faced for many years since independence. We have all heard of the theory that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Why? This is because of the poverty trap, where it is nearly impossible to get out of the cycle of poverty that people are trapped in. Many things that can help pull people out of poverty require the one thing poor people don't have: money. For example, without money, it is difficult to get a decent education and acquire new skills to boost job prospects. This reduces their chances at earning a high income, which in turn brings the inability to provide their children with a good education so that they can get good job prospects. And the cycle continues. The poverty trap creates a massive social gap, which can only be closed if we all collectively work towards closing it. For many of us, bridging the social gap means bringing the rural poor up to the standards of the urban rich. However, is the lifestyle of the urban rich really sustainable? Doesn't it affect the environment negatively? Our metropolitan cities have mountains of non-degradable waste lining the outskirts. Our cities flood every monsoon because the drains get clogged up by the amount of uncontrolled waste and construction cement on every outlet. If some rainwater does manage to get out of the city, it ends up polluting the rivers and the seas. Plastic has become such an essential part of our lives. Isn't that ironic? That is what is slowly killing us. Contrary to this, our rural countryside suffers from lack of basic necessities. People struggle to get clean water, unadulterated grain, and inexpensive vegetables. Changing the situation cannot be done by a few people alone. We need to sit up and think of ways in which the urban rich might take a step back and emulate the naturally sustainable lifestyle of the rural poor, which they have been somewhat forced to adopt. The consequences of reducing inequalities should not be increasing risk to our environment. If the lifestyle of the developed affects the climate in such a way that it can only lead to disaster, the idea of development is flawed. If by bridging the gap between the rich and the poor, we create a class that continues to overconsume resources and pollute the earth, that equality has no meaning. The rural poor should have access to basic facilities and live life comfortably, as the urban rich do. However, while thinking of ways in which this can be achieved, the future political leaders, social workers, and economic strategists sitting here should consider environmentally sustainable ways to do so. Thank you.